Oh.
Where's TCTV?
We'll have to check into that. It's, yeah. Yeah, good point.
Good morning, Chief. Good morning, Marlisa. I didn't get all the way back there to.
Okay. We're almost ready. We're almost ready.
We have another marathon, I can tell.
Yeah. Our busy summer life.
Yeah.
Are you ready in the back, Deb?
I am.
Okay. Are you ready in the front, Jane?
Turn on your sound. Yep, already.
Okay. Our clocks don't match. All right. Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed, and you can join us online by going to our website or to tctvonline.com. Click on live broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phones. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to the public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners office at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Do we have anyone signed up in the room, or has anyone registered online for public comment?
There is a signature on the public comment board. I'm not sure if that's intended for public comment, but there is one.
No.
Okay.
I thought that was a sign-in sheet.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for being here.
Nice.
Okay, well, with that, we will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Olson, will you lead us,
I
please?
certainly will.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Well, we have a couple of unscheduled agenda items, so if you're following our agenda, we'll have one unscheduled item after item 12 and a second after item 15. And the first thing we have this morning, I'm pleased to introduce Christy Nyseth, Tillamook County Clerk, who is going to give us a presentation on ranked choice voting. I personally have been getting a lot of questions about ranked choice voting, which I have felt inadequate to answer. So this is our first take at educating the community about ranked choice voting. So thank you so much for being here.
You are very welcome. And just so we're clear, I don't know everything there is to know about either, and I'm learning. So if you have questions, I will delve in and get you some more in-depth answers, but we're just going to kind of do a basic, and then we'll go over a sample of how we're going to vote for dinner. And then we'll just kind of go over it that way. And then I want to show some sample ballots from another county that uses the same tabulation interface that we do. So I can show some ballots that voters might kind of be able to, it's the same look that we have. And so I'll share that at the end. So, and then any questions, please let me know and we'll go forward. And I will be working with both the Democratic and Republican parties. They've wanted to do some training this summer on ranked choice voting. So we'll be presenting this as well to the community this summer. So, all right, let's share.
And this is probably included in your presentation, but just if not, will you please speak to, for people who are listening or watching, will you please speak to the trend and why we're talking about this now, what's happening with ranked choice voting across the state and why we're talking about it?
Yes,
Thank
I will, yes. I'll do my best. All right, ranked choice voting. So, just a little bit about like the hows and the why. So House Bill 2004 was enacted in legislation in the 2023 session. And so this is what is putting ranked choice voting on the ballot, statewide vote in November 5th of 2024, the general election. And if Oregon voters pass this measure, it will become effective January 1 of 2028. So there will be about 3 years for implementation. Ranked choice voting is a voting system where voters rank candidates in order of their preference instead of just voting for one candidate. So if we take, like if the three of you are on the ballot at the same time, it would be ranking you all based on preference. And so it wouldn't just be whoever the top vote getter wins, and it's just one candidate. You get to rank how you, well, if Doug doesn't win, then I would like Mary Faith to win. Mary Faith, I want Aaron. So that's what you're doing is ranking. And House Bill 2004 makes federal and state races subject to ranked choice voting. So I'm going to link the House bill on my website under the elections tab, and I'll do a little ranked choice voting, but I'll put the House bill there so people can read it if they're interested. You can get more information. But if it's voted in, the following elections, the election would determine the following offices. So it would be president and vice president for the United States. It would be United States senators and representatives in Congress. It would be for the governor, the secretary of state, the state treasurer, and attorney general. And then ranked choice voting would also, in a primary election, determine who the commissioners are for the Bureau of Labor and Industry for the state. So those are the only positions, should this pass, that would be up for vote for ranked choice statewide, okay? Then the language further goes on to say that cities may enact ranked choice voting, counties may enact ranked choice voting, school districts and any other special districts could implement it as well. And but again, with home rule, counties are different, so charters, things like that could prohibit it, but it could potentially be open then, should it pass, to other cities and special districts as well, and counties. So, but that's all outlined in House Bill 2004. So you have your ballot, and on your ballot, your voter is going to rank your candidates as their first, second, and third choice, and so on. So the number of candidates equals the number of choices, along with write-ins. So if Scooby, Thelma, and Daphne are on the ballot, you're gonna say, okay, well, you're gonna rank them. I want Scooby to be my second choice, Thelma's my first, and then Daphne's my third choice. So that's how you're ranking. Should you decide that none of those candidates you want, you'll have the option to write in and say, you know, you want SpongeBob to be president, then he could be your first choice. And then you could rank your write-in. So, and then I'm not sure how that would work internally in our office for how we tabulate those and count those, but anyway, you'll have an option to rank a write-in should you choose to do so. So ranked choice is like your first choice count. And so we're looking at what the first choices are. So in round one, and these are called rounds. And so you start with round one, and that's where we tabulate all the first round choices, and those are counted. And if a candidate receives more than 50% of the vote, then they will win outright. So if you have 51%, then candidate one wins, and it doesn't go to a round two, and it would stop. But if no one gets the majority of votes, then we go to round two. And then votes, then you redistribute the votes. And so votes for eliminated candidates are redistributed to the voter's next choice on their ballot. So say your first choice, which this will make more sense when we start figuring out what we're having for dinner tonight, but so say, you know, Scooby didn't get all the votes, so then you take the votes for the next candidate and you distribute those out. And it's kind of confusing, but redistribution is what it's called. All right, and then you just keep repeating it. So the above steps are repeated until one candidate finally receives more than 50% of the votes, and then they're declared the winner at that point. So let's look at what's for dinner. So we have 4 choices, and we're either gonna have steak, shrimp, ice cream, or salad for dinner. And for this exercise, we will have 20 people that are voting and deciding on what's for dinner and casting their vote. So each person will then rank their choices. So for me, I want to have steak first. Shrimp would be my third choice. Salad would be my second. And I know, gasp, but ice cream would be my fourth choice. So you rank. So everybody's going to rank. And once we're done ranking, then we tally round one. And we look, because now the winner has to get 51% of the votes cast. So steak got 7 of the 20 votes, shrimp got 5, and salad got 5, and then ice cream got 3 votes. So no one got 11 votes, which would be 51%. And so then what happens is the candidate with the least amount of votes then gets eliminated. So which is ice cream. So ice cream now is off the table. So now we move into round 2, and we're going to redistribute those votes. And so ice cream had 3 votes. And so now we look at who voted for ice cream as their second choice. So of those 3 votes, shrimp would have gotten 2 votes, and salad got 1 vote. So we distribute those, and now steak has 7, shrimp has 7, and salad has 6. We still don't have 51% of the vote. And so now we have to go into a round 3. And so salad now is off the table. And so salad had 6 votes. So now we have to redistribute salad's votes. And of those, steak got 1 additional, shrimp got 5 additional votes. So now shrimp wins with 12 votes. And so that is how they get redistributed through the process of ranked choice. And so where steak in round 1 would have, under traditional voting, would have won because they had the most votes, then now shrimp has won because other people ranked shrimp over steak across the different rounds as their second choice. So that is how, it's very simplistic, I know, but that's kind of how it's redistributed across votes. And I want to show some sample ballots so we can kind of look at what that looks like. So 1 second here on my phone. Okay. No share. All right. So I know that might be a little hard to, let's see, we'll go big here. So this is a Benton County ballot. In Benton County, the city of Corvallis has ranked choice voting. So Benton County also uses election systems and software, ES&S, and they have the same tabulator that we have. And so they have a very similar ballot style because this is the ballot style that ES&S counties use. So it should look familiar to everybody. So you'll see that they have their 3 candidates, and so they have 3 candidates, and then they have their ranking, the 3 ranks, first, second, or third, and then you can see where they're write-in. You have an option to write someone in and rank that person as well. And so that's what it would look like, just so you can see, but that's how it would be presented to the voters. And this was for a special, was this for this election? This was for November of 2022. So this was at the last gubernatorial election. And then let's see. I also have one for November, which is a little bit, yeah. So this is a 4-page ballot. So this is where this is for president, so federal offices. So you can see that the more candidates we have, the more their ranking that there will be. And so the ballot sizes then, of course, get much larger because this is an 11 by 17 ballot size and it's 4 pages. So voters would then get multiple page ballots. And so you'd have to keep track of your pages and everything. So that's something that at different elections, depending on how much is on the ballot with measures and everything, that we could have pretty large ballots. So, but that's a sample there of what that would look like. and I won't put these out on our website because they're not mine to share, but I did get his permission in this meeting to share these with you, so, but these will not be on my website. But if anyone has questions, please, let me know. All right. So that is ranked choice voting, very simplistic. There are 9. So the city of Portland has implemented ranked choice voting. We have Benton County, the city of Corvallis, and there are a couple smaller jurisdictions that do as well. And I think it depends on home rule. And so 9 of the home rule counties, some of them have implemented ranked choice voting before it going out for a vote. So there are several counties. And, countrywide, I think people, what I gather from what I've been reading and for what the general consensus is and talking to colleagues and what is that, people want the option to have more like the popular vote, or, have it be based on, well, maybe my person didn't win, but then my second choice should have an opportunity to win, and it's just not necessarily popularity, if that makes sense. So I think that's kind of the trend countrywide, and it's been implemented in 9 states, I think. 9 states use it.
It's okay.
So does that mean that runoffs are eliminated, right? Because
That's something that, well, technically, yes, because
Technically
you're always
runoffs.
you're always going to have to reach that 51%. But there could potentially be a case though where you have equal numbers. So if you get down
Okay.
in the distribution, if you're redistributing numbers, then somebody could potentially tie, or you still could be within that 10 to 1% that would trigger an automatic recount as well. So I think we'll always have that scenario.
Mhm.
And part of the language too is that with the Secretary of State, we'll work with county clerks and elections officials to write administrative rules and revise statutes to then carry out ranked choice voting statewide, because things will have to change. Things are going to be different. So.
Yeah. In the counties where they have it, where it gets to be pages and pages, do they see any reduction in voter turnout? Do we know? I realize that may be a question you don't have the answer to.
I can get an answer for you. I can ask Tim. I think Tim Scott from Multnomah County, he's been, it's a lot, because they'll have 20-some candidates for city council, and, so their pages. And so similar, not everybody lives in the city of Tillamook, for example, right? So if you're outside the city of Tillamook, we're gonna have ballot styles for people that reside outside. So you're gonna get that ballot style. And then say the city of Tillamook implemented ranked choice voting, then the city of Tillamook would have ranked choice ballots. And so then you'll have multiple, you could have potentially have multiple ballots going out and multiple styles and multiple pages, which I think it could be confusing and can be, if person, they only turn in page 1 and they don't turn in page 2, what does that look like for, undervotes and blank
Yeah.
ballots? And it'll be interesting to see,
Yeah.
what that might look like internally for us.
Yeah, just I think about, when we send out a survey, we try to make sure it doesn't get too long because people won't finish it. And so I hear you talking about the multiple pages of ballots, and it crosses my mind that people might just go, this is too much. So it just,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't think we will fully know until, upon, if it passes and upon implementation, what that would actually look like. And,
Yeah,
and so, yeah,
yeah, thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, thank you, and I'll just note for the record that I am the liaison to this department, to the county clerk. And our last election, and she reported to the commission at that point, I thought went exceptionally well, and there's been a few changes over the last few years in that office, but things are going well. So now I will give you my opinion, and this is simply all you're going to get from me is an opinion. And I have followed this maybe more closely than some, simply because that's what I do, and more engaged in local and state government than maybe somebody just walking through the aisles of Safeway. And also, I happen to own some property in Washington State, and they have had it there for some time now, the last couple of rounds, I believe. So if we believe, and I think we all could believe it, that the states are laboratories of democracy, and so this is how you try things out and see if they work, see if it works in our system. So I'm all in favor of that. I think this is a good step forward in a lot of ways, but I'll tell you how I see it. First of all, I'd ask the question, is our current system broken? I'm not too sure it is. You may be disgusted with certain candidates or whatever, but I'm not sure it's broken to the point where we need a radical change. On the other hand, trying out something and see if it works and is better than what we have, I'm for that as well. I think that's okay. I'm a little bit disappointed that I had to have shrimp for dinner, only because it was no one's first choice. Nobody wanted shrimp right off the bat, but we all are stuck with shrimp. So if you're allergic to shrimp, you're gonna go hungry or something like that, and I'm just using your example. So that bothered me a little bit. It's also, for a long time, when you go into something like this, there needs to be one more option, and this is just, again, my opinion, that's all I'm offering this morning. We need one more line that says none of the above. Meaning that if you don't like anybody, you vote none of the above. And my judgment that, and I'm being a little, too clever here probably, that's not really how it should work. But sometimes you see the candidates and they're also so disagreeable, shall we say, you don't like any of them. And maybe the current presidential election would be a good example. We've got two that not a lot of people think these are the two best that we can do in America. But again, that's an aside. So the history on this, I'd be very interested in following it. And as I said, in Washington State, they've had it for some years, and I think it's working. And I'm not sure what other states. Do you know, Christie, offhand, where it's been done for maybe a couple or three rounds?
I mean, I think it's working, and then, there are things that have been litigated, because people have challenged the vote and the constitutionality of it. So I think that there are states that are trying to repeal it, or jurisdictions that are trying to repeal it as well. So I think it's anything that we do, I think that you have that chance of having that happen.
Sure. And I understand that, and like I said, it's an experiment, I think, in many ways, but I can see some advantages. And I'm assuming now there's more than candidates on a typical ballot. There are ballot measures of one sort. And I'm assuming those are in no way involved with this because it's an up or down vote on ballot measures. Typically, you either favor it or you don't.
Right, that is correct. So this specifically would only allow us to vote on the president, to state and
Right.
federal races, which are, for president and the representatives, governor, secretary, state treasurer, so those. It's nothing else. So it's not like the judges, no county races, no cities, unless the cities implement or the
Well,
county.
you
were to
did say
implement
there's
it.
an option, though, for cities and counties.
May, yes, the language says they may.
If
They
their
choose.
statutory foundation, meaning home rule or otherwise, permits that, you could do that. You could take it down. For example, let's say on a county commission, one of the positions had 4, you could implement it there if this county or any other county chose to do so, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so those are just my observations. I don't think it's bad to try it, and it may be a lot better than what we have. I think time will tell. I will ask you, how much more work do you see for your relatively small department and staff? Meaning that if you have to run, say, 3 rounds, you had one example wherever, was it Benton County or wherever, they had quite a number of candidates, so it might take 3, 4, 5 passes to get to where you have the 50+1.
Right. So for us, like I said, we use election systems and software, ES&S, and we have the DS-850, the digital scanner 850 is what we use to tabulate. And so for us, I do know, for example, Multnomah County, they use a different tabulation interface than we do. They had to spend over $1 million to reformat their tabulation interface to allow them to do ranked choice voting and implement it for this November, for the city of Portland. But for us, what we would have to do is our tabulator will tabulate, and we have a standalone laptop that has our electionware program, which is what we use and we upload the results into, and that is what gives us our files that we can upload to the state, and that also gives us our abstracts and results. I'd have to take that data and put it in another standalone laptop that's a third-party computer that would then do the ranked choice voting tabulation for us, because our software is not set up to do ranked choice voting. and nor will it ever be set up to do that. So what we then have to use is a third-party company out in the back, that's back east, that we would have to have a contract with and pay for them to do that portion of the tabulation for us.
So it is somewhat more time-consuming and expensive, at least on the margins, as far as we know. Do you see, and I'll just ask you for your opinion as someone who's been doing this for a long time, do you think there is a larger opportunity for fraud of some sort?
No.
Because,
No, I mean, the only thing that's gonna happen is like, our biggest problem would be people not turning in. The way that we issue ballots, and the way that we keep our voter rolls up to date, and the way that we issue replacements or reissue ballots or set new voters up, that's gonna be the same thing. The way that we take those envelopes in, because the ballots are gonna come to us in the envelope, and the way that we process those internally, that process won't change. And so the ability for fraud to happen, no, you're still gonna have to have a ballot that we produce that's able to go through our tabulator, and one person can get one ballot. The only problem is gonna be when we have multiple page ballots in that scenario, is where it can get dicey for us in terms of then we have to track, okay, we didn't get everything back. And if we have multiple ballots in an envelope trying to figure out where those are, and that's the only thing that I can see that could be an issue. And then, of course, the extra workload of just having to learn a new system, but that's not a problem. It's part of the job,
no,
We
I
get to do
understand
that.
that. So what about, and I'll just ask one more question for your opinion. Let's say that there's a group supporting a certain candidate, which is the way it works. And so they say, well, there's a lot of people that there are several groups that are going to favor one candidate over another. But let's all get together and vote this individual in as our number 2 option, thinking that the vote will be split on the top side, and then it'll rise to the top. Although it's nobody's first choice, if we've got X% coming through for number 2, there's a strong likelihood they'll go up. I think there's a way to game the system, maybe. And I'm just very amateur looking at it mathematically.
Yeah, it's probably no different than, people coming together and deciding, that, well, we're gonna do a write-in campaign, and we can probably get enough people that could overthrow a person potentially that's filed. I don't think that there's really anything more nefarious, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't see it as a big deal, really. Yeah.
Well, time will tell, and I'm just asking these questions, not to be adversarial necessarily, I just, it's gonna be an interesting study, and somebody will write a big, long paper on it, probably, when it's all done. So, okay, I'm excited to see it happen, and I'll certainly wanna watch how it plays out, and, I think we'll all have an education, we'll know more in X number of years than we do now, so,
That's true.
thank you.
Yeah.
So some of the questions I've been asked are, what or who would it benefit? What's the benefit to it? And why are people interested in it? Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay.
And I think it's one of those things, like we have, I know personally for myself, that we have so many things going on. It hasn't been something that I've really focused on until the last couple months when we knew it was going to be on the ballot in November. So, and then having people ask questions. And so I'm just starting to delve in. So can't give you an educated answer for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all right.
I have a thought of who it might benefit.
Sure.
So when we have races where you have a third-party candidate, so to speak, where people are voting because they're just none of the above, right? And they want to register that. They want people to know that I don't like anyone who's here, but my second choice is going to be X, right? So it seems like that protest vote, I'm allowed to cast my protest vote, which I assume gets reported out, in the beginning that this candidate got so many, so that I can say to the system, I'm frustrated. But at the end of the day, I get a second choice vote. Whereas I think back to when Senator Johnson ran, and I think there was that challenge where unless people felt fully like she can really, as an independent candidate, take this vote, I think people may have gone back and said, no, I'm not going to put her as my candidate, right? So I think it could tip the scales in some of those directions where people are concerned. They want to vote that independent candidate. They want to take that chance, but they're afraid that it's really going to tip it in the absolute wrong direction, where if you have 1 and 2, you're like, well, if they don't really make it, it's okay. Here's my fallback. So I think it could benefit in that way, and in that way, perhaps a bit more, I don't know, opening of our system, because independent candidates may be more likely to run, independent candidates may actually get more of those votes because of the fallback.
Thank you.
Just a thought.
Thank you. That is interesting. Yeah, so a leaning away from the rigid two-party system.
Right.
Interesting. Huh, well, that's an excellent point. Someone in my household doesn't believe in the two-party system, so always votes for a third-party candidate. So I wonder if that person would be interested in having a second choice. Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, well, more to be revealed. Another question that you might not know the answer to, that people have asked me is, does it eliminate primaries?
No, and I think that's one of the things when I was reading through that I don't think it does, because I don't think that you can ever, I mean, potentially for us, like, so if you have multiple candidates, for example, so commissioner positions are gonna be in the May primary, because, and when more than 3 candidates run for a position, then you have to have the runoff in May and November, and then in November, they go to top 2 to November. And so I don't know what that would look like. And it doesn't say that it eliminates a primary. And so, because I think you would always have to have that, the primary. Because, I don't know, it's a good question. I don't think the statute, or what they haven't written the statute for it yet, but House Bill doesn't talk about eliminating the primary. It just talks about we'd still have those races. It would still go forward. And it doesn't speak to what the county would do. So our positions would then still always be on that primary, because you'd have to have that runoff.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the sample you showed from Benton County, I think that was the Democratic primary ranked.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think you would still have to have that.
Okay. To Doug's point about shrimp, what I agree with you, and what the interesting thing in that example to me was that people who preferred salad, it was the salad enthusiasts who caused shrimp to rise.
Those
So there
darn
could be
vegetarians.
unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
One more.
Yeah, please.
One other thing that I've noticed now in Washington State, since I get voter pamphlets, obviously don't vote over there, but when they list, and now our races here, and many are nonpartisan, but many are partisan as well. And so in Washington State, they don't say Republican or Democrat or independent or whatever it is, they say prefers, which is a distinction without a difference. I wonder, has there been any conversation you've heard with all your professional colleagues that language might come over to Oregon as well?
No, they have, most of the conversation has been around, eliminating, around incumbents, with judges. They're the only ones where the incumbent is listed. And then, of course, just the state partisan races and federal, they can have their party elimination. But they were talking about, they've allowed in the last 2 elections to have more than one party affiliation. So I'm independent, or I'm not a member of a party, but I would vote, Pacific Green, or I would be, Working Families, and they can have more than one party listed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Things certainly change, and like I said earlier, I don't see any reason why we can't try this and run it out for 10 years or whatever and see if it works. Might work.
We'll see if everyone agrees with you, Doug, come November, right?
Right.
So Christy, I want to thank you for being here this morning. I want to thank you for helping us get started in this conversation. And I want to thank you for your attitude and approach. As you said, it's the job. If it's what we do, it's what we do. And I appreciate that. I think that if this does pass in November, we will be well placed to implement it because of how you're approaching it. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it also. So thank you for being here and for
Yep.
putting this presentation together. And I'm sure we'll come back for a follow-up later.
Absolutely. And if you have questions, let me know. I will link this to the website today. And then if people have questions, just reach out. So,
Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
Okay, well, that was great and very interesting. We will move on in our agenda to item 6, which is consideration of a second amendment to the Oregon Health Authority 2024-2025 Intergovernmental Agreement Number 026023 for the financing of community mental health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention, and problem gambling services. With us, we have Frank Hanna Williams, Executive Director of Tillamook Family Counseling Center, on the phone. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, everyone. Frank Hanna Williams, Director, Tillamook Family Counseling Center. Specifically, this amendment reflects what I would call a pause. It's a pause of an award for school-based mental health services in Tillamook County. Funds that come to Tillamook Family Counseling Center for the purpose of having a staff person attached to this any of the schools in the county. The award is very specific, and it supports agency clinicians who would be Tillamook Family Counseling Center employees supporting the needs of students in Tillamook County schools. As we continue to look for staff, we're having we're working on some challenges around that. We will be able to lift the pause, if you will, so that the funds will be available to support the positions as needed. Again, this reflects a pause, not an elimination of funds, and that is the focus of this particular amendment. I've had a lot of conversation with the designated staff at Oregon Health Authority, and we've come to this agreement. And again, as I said, it is we will be able to lift the pause so that we're not, in effect, we're not piling up dollars that we're not using, but we will be able to lift them to support the positions as needed. So that is that is the amendment, and I request your approval.
Thank you, Frank. Commissioners, questions?
No, just I understand the challenges of hiring. I attend Frank's board meetings when I can, and I know that the world out there has not been producing enough mental health professionals for the positions that have been created. The great news is the state is moving forward with a lot more support and funding for behavioral health, and our challenge is just getting the workforce to keep up. So I understand this as a pause, that this funding is being held back until we're able to staff it, and I appreciate Frank and his team's ongoing work to recruit and bring folks in.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, thank you. I would agree with Commissioner Scar. This is something that seems like it's routine, but it apparently is more difficult. And I would support moving forward, whatever it takes to get there, because there are a number of people who need this service and can take advantage of it, and we need to keep on and keep the pressure on. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. Excuse me. I agree. Also, it is important work, and certainly we all know that there are problems with recruitment, and so I wish you well and Godspeed, Frank, in recruiting somebody for this position, and support the temporary pause.
Madam Chair, in
Thank you.
consideration. Madam Chair, in consideration of a second amendment to Oregon Health Authority 2024-2025 Intergovernmental Agreement number 026023 for the financing of community mental health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention, and problem gambling services, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Frank.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners.
Item 7 is consideration of a Community Action Resources Enterprises, Inc. request for approval of updates to the Care Shelter project plans. With us, we have Marlisa De Jesus, the project manager of the Houseless Action Network. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, thank you. Thanks for being here with us in person.
Yes, of course. So I am bringing to you guys our layout revisions. So you had approved our Shelter Village layout a few months ago, but we had to make some revisions to ensure that we have 6 feet of space between each of the buildings and the shelters to ensure fire safety precautions. Previously, each of the micro shelters had been kind of grouped into different little kind of pods. So this is a little bit more square of a layout, but it does ensure that if there was a fire in one of the buildings, it wouldn't immediately catch to the next, and we wouldn't have those issues. So it was a safety decision that we decided to make these revisions. I wanted to note that we did not lose any shelter space, so we didn't have to remove any shelters, but we did transition some of those family shelters, which house 4 beds, into micro shelters, which would just house 2 beds.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you, Marlisa. I know this has been a journey and a trial to get this to where we would like it to be. So I appreciate that you all have continued doggedly to just keep working through the changes that needed to happen, and appreciate that we are close. I believe that we did approve the French drain a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, hopefully this will be the last piece, and we'll be ready to get these on the ground and make this available to folks who are experiencing homelessness. I know that the Supreme Court recently ruled to allow cities and counties to not necessarily have the amount of restrictions on them in asking people to move on. However, in the state of Oregon, there are still things to be determined because it was actually action taken by the legislature as well. But inside that context, I believe our goal has always been to have a place for people to go. And that's really what this provides, is a place for people to go where they can receive services, they have the opportunity to work toward becoming housed, and just frankly, they can be safe. So I appreciate the hard work that's going on, and I look forward to this coming to fruition.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. I agree as well that this is a good step forward. I do have one out of curiosity. What brought this to your attention, or what prompted you to say this needs to be adjusted and spacing needs to be increased and so on? How did that happen?
Yeah, we had been reviewing this with our contractor who is creating the pallet shelters and asked them to review. It was something that had come to my mind, and so I asked them about it, and we also consulted with the fire department here in Tillamook as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious if or OSHA or somebody came by, or the local fire people and others, but it sounds like there's almost a periodic review, and collectively you say, well, we need to do this. So and I'm good with that. I'm just curious if somebody came around, knocked on your door and said, you got to do something.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I am supportive of this. I'm disappointed just in general that we'll have fewer family shelters, because I think that's a nice thing to offer. But certainly supportive of decreasing the risk of a fire from spreading. So it makes sense, and I do support it.
I would like to note that we will be transitioning the current shelter village by the Adventist Church into a family location. So that is to allow the families to have a separate location that's a little quieter, and then also allow us to take in anybody that needs assistance at this new village.
That's
So,
great.
yes, I do want to note that we will still be serving families and minors.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay,
Okay.
I think we're ready.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a Community Action Resource Enterprises, Inc. request for approval of updates to the CARE Shelter project plans, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you,
Thank you
Marlisa.
very much.
Okay, item 8 is consideration of a professional services agreement with Roger Cook, PhD, LPC, for sex offender assessment and counseling services. With us, we have Lieutenant Ani Seaholm from the Sheriff's Office. Good morning, Ani.
Good morning, Commissioners. So this is in consideration for a professional service agreement. It's a renewal. We've had this for the last few years with Dr. Roger Cook, who provides our sex offense treatment. We started this a few years ago because we saw a need, because sex offense treatment is not covered by insurance. And so there's a barrier for people to immediately get going in treatment and stay in treatment because of the cost. And so we worked with Dr. Roger Cook to get this going to where we pay the costs up front, and then we try to recoup those costs from the justice involved individuals that we supervise. So this is just a renewal. We had this, like I said, the last couple years, there wasn't any changes from the year previous. And we've seen, I've been doing the sex offender treatment program with Dr. Cook, or the supervision piece of it, in collaboration with Dr. Cook for a number of years. And this has really helped with more of an immediate intake process, because the individual does not need to come up with the funds first to get engaged. So I've seen it be quite a benefit for getting those people involved, the accountability piece, and just the overall wraparound services that we're able to provide with the collaboration with his treatment services.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Thank you. Obviously, well, not obviously, but I do support this very much because it's ongoing, certainly necessary. My only question would be about how many individuals are helped by this program. In other words, is it 8 or 10 or 15 or 60, or could you give us a range?
Sure. I would say on average, we typically have anywhere from like 20 to 25 clients that are engaged in treatment services for the sex offense treatment.
And that's over what period of time?
So I would say that's always ongoing. But as far as like each individual has their own duration of treatment. So someone can start and be done, you know, in a year, in 2 years. It's very individualized, but just as an ongoing year to year, I was just looking, and it's approximately 20 to 25 that we have in treatment at one given time.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And as a follow-up to that, Ani, are they, those individuals receiving counseling and treatment while they're on parole or probation for a sex offense?
Correct. This contract is just for those that are under supervision with us. Either, yes, for a sex offense, or that they have to have treatment. Maybe they had a past sex offense, that they haven't completed treatment. So various different things that would put them into this either individual treatments or group treatment with Dr. Cook. They go through an assessment process or an evaluation process to determine the need, and then are placed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ani. Important work, and I'm so pleased that we are proactive with getting people into the treatment that they need. I know that the ultimate goal is to have folks return to our community, but to do so safely, and that is the work that you all are engaged in. Do you have any recidivism numbers or anything to know? Are we seeing this as effective treatment? I assume that we are, but I'm curious.
Sure. I don't have any direct recidivism numbers to this particular caseload. That'd be interesting to try to find out. I would have to get back to you on that, but I do feel like it. I mean, it's a needed program. It's you know, some people do go out and commit new crimes. As far as getting them engaged right away too, I think that's a benefit to the community. It has extra eyes on somebody. There's the collaborative efforts between whoever the supervising officer is and the treatment provider. And having that kind of wraparound approach, I do think it helps with minimizing that, but there's no, you know, 100% chance of somebody not recidivating.
Sure. Yeah, no, and that's true with any offense that they may have.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly the more services that we can make available to them, the safer we make our communities, and the
Mm-hmm.
less likely that there will be an additional offense. And it's, so I'm pleased that we have the service and then we get folks engaged quickly. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
As am I. I think it is important indeed. And as a society, we want people who commit those kinds of offenses to recover, to get treatment, to be better and become safe. We want that. And if price is the barrier because insurance doesn't cover it, then I'm fully supportive of the funding to get that service available to people and quickly. So it makes good sense, and I'm grateful for your work.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of a professional services agreement with Roger Cook, PhD, LPC, for sex offender assessment and counseling services, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Ani.
Thanks, commissioners.
Item 9 is consideration of a memorandum of agreement with Tillamook Family Counseling Center for supervision agreement. With us, we have Marlene Putman. Good morning, Administrator of Health and Human Services.
Morning. Yes, we sometimes have agreements between Tillamook Family Counseling Center and the health center or health department to provide supervision for our respective staff or those who are in training. And that's what this memorandum of understanding or agreement is about. In this case specifically, this relates to a licensed social worker on our staff who will provide supervision and oversight for a certified social work associate, because that individual requires a license, a supervision towards their licensure. So this agreement spells out what those specific requirements are, including things like has to be an LCSW to supervise this person. It has to be 2 hours a month, but up to an hour a week, possibly, that we're going to figure out space between us. So it's an opportunity really to bring some more talented folks into our community and provide the supervision they need to get their licensure. And that's what we're asking for your approval to do today.
Thank you. Okay, questions, comments?
Just, I think this is a great partnership. We have so many great partnerships across the community with the health department, and certainly the health department and Tillamook Family Counseling do many things together. So this is just another great partnership, and I'm in support.
Thank you, as am I. It seems fairly routine, but nothing is routine these days, it seems like. But this is something that's absolutely necessary, and I also think there's been a long history, as was pointed out, of working together on this. So yes, let's get it done.
I agree. I was just thinking about a local woman who just graduated from Portland State with her master's in social work, and I was thinking, oh, I hope this will work for her, you know, because people need a program where they can work under an LCSW in order to get those hours and experience. So I think it's terrific. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of a memorandum of agreement with Tillamook Family Counseling Center for a supervision agreement, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Okay, Marlene, you have several with us. Item 10 is consideration of modification number 1 to professional services agreement number 6510 with the Smile Studio for Federally Qualified Health Center, Oregon Health Plan, Medicaid, and non-insured dental services. Marlene.
Yes, so speaking of great partnerships, the ability to work with our local dentists to provide dental services for our Medicaid and uninsured folks is really valuable and important. And this is a modification of our agreement with the Smile Studio and Dr. Lee Long and his team. We have updated the agreement effective July 1. I think it was last week we're talking about the need to provide some increase in the reimbursement to our dental contract providers because we hadn't done so for at least 6 years. So this reflects the same increase across the board for all of our dental contract providers as described in item 2, agreement price and amount. So we've increased those 15% by category or number of patients served per month. And there, it results in a calculation of per visit cost. This is higher than the Medicaid reimbursement rate because we could not contract with anyone for the Medicaid reimbursement rate. It covers our costs. It may not cover all of theirs, but it assists towards those costs at a flat rate per visit, regardless of type. So this is the agreement that we've worked out with our local dental providers. And again, this is an update to our previous agreement with the Smile Studio and Dr. Lee Long and his team.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. You know, we've talked before, and I think we do every year, about the importance of dental care and the importance of dental care in our community. That when we opened our dental practice through our FQHC, I believe we were immediately handed about 5,000 people who were uninsured and needed dental care in our community. So these partnerships are super important. There is no way that through our own clinic we could possibly serve everyone in need. And so we appreciate our local dentists who partner with us on this, to Marlene's point, that this probably does not even cover their full cost, but at least it makes it something that is viable for them to keep doing in partnership with us. So I'm in support.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, thank you. I too support dental care because it's an integral part. And so my only question, if you look at 10 and 11, essentially they're the same thing with a different organization. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, for
You
that
are
agenda
correct.
item.
Items on your agenda,
Okay,
correct.
so then that, we're doing the same thing, just happens to have two providers then, which makes sense. So yes, I'm good. That's a necessary service, and not everybody likes to go to the dentist, but it's certainly what we need to do. Let's do it.
I am fully supportive also and grateful to Dr. Lee Long for continuing in this program.
Perfect. Madam Chair, in consideration of modification number 1 to professional services agreement number 6510 with the Smile Studio for Federally Qualified Health Center, FQHC, Oregon Health Plan Medicaid and non-insured dental services, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. To Doug's point, item 11 is very similar. Consideration of professional services agreement 23-/24-025 with Sand Creek Dental for Federally Qualified Health Center, Oregon Health Plan, Medicaid, and non-insured dental services. Marlene?
Yes, the two things that I would point out that are different is one, the date. So the date on this agreement is retroactive to June 1. Although we haven't started providing direct dental services with Sand Creek, we have, for the number 2 item, had a gap in agreements with Sand Creek. They were looking to staff up to get dentists hard in their office, and we had our own dentist. Now we have a small gap in our schedule because our dentist has retired and moved on to other opportunities. So we're looking to fill that vacancy. And Dr. Cyrus Javity and his clinic have agreed to come back and work with us while we seek to fill those positions. So that's for the reason for the change in the date and why this isn't an amendment, but rather a new agreement. Otherwise, the price is the same.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Commissioner?
No questions. I think they've been answered. Thank you.
All right, well, I am grateful to Dr. Javity and his team for this agreement, and I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of professional services agreement number 23/24-025 with Sand Creek Dental for Federally Qualified Health Center, FQHC, Oregon Health Plan Medicaid, and non-insured dental services, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 12 is consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time community health chief financial officer in the Health and Human Services Department. With us, we have Jody Wilson, Director of Human Resources. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is a position that has been in development for a long time. We've been working with HHS and even my predecessors about succession planning and being able to create a structure. We'd love to keep Marlene forever, but someday we're going to have to let her retire. And how do you rebuild that team and kind of backfill the overflow of the administration and accounting arm, and being able to pick up some of the contracting. I see her every week in here with a new contract for the various grants, programs, and vendors. And so this position was developed to pick up the overflow from the accounting team, as well as oversee the accounting division. I call it the accounting division, they call it administration, but it helps you kind of see how that sits across the span. But that's the accounting manager, you have some insurance billing techs, you have a new IS position, there's some Epic support in that division. So to see how that would sit across that new org structure. And so this would be the community health CFO to oversee that department. And so we have analyzed that position. It's going to be a tough position to fill in community health, as we all know. We're competing in our particular market with for-profit or nonprofit providers. So it will be a tough position to fill, but we have been working a long time on development of that position.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yes, thank you. You know, we've been working, Jody and I, Marlene, have all been working together over the last year. Marlene has created a structure really and she's been building on this structure. So you might remember that Rocky Phillips was hired as our public health deputy. So she is one of those important and key pieces that has helped Marlene and will continue to help whoever comes in succession-wise, because she has taken a leadership role in public health. There is also a chief operations officer for clinics that has taken a role there. You have our medical chief of staff, which oversees the medical staffing and services. So Marlene is building out just the team that's really needed to oversee our federally qualified health centers as well as our public health, as Marlene will make that transition, along with many of her key leadership staff will also be retiring in the next 3 years. So it's really an important process that we're in the midst of. And as she has really visioned this chief financial officer position is absolutely crucial because of the medical billing nature and the Epic medical records nature of what occurs inside their finance system. So they are still under the county's finance system. Our treasurer still pays the bills and does the work related to that. But there is an additional entire sort of funding piece that has to be monitored and managed at the health department, including a significant amount of compliance work that goes into that, because you are medically billing insurance companies as well as working with the federal government for the funds that we get as an FQHC. So there's a significant amount of additional and different financial tracking work that occurs at the health department. And that's what makes this position so critical. So I'm pleased to see that after the years of development to really make sure that we've got it right, that work has been done. I appreciate Jody's work to really work with Marlene to refine that job description and really clarify where it sits in our structure, how it is similar and different from other finance positions that really are spread across the entire county, because many departments have a finance position within them. And this is really kind of it's unique to health department function.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, thank you. I think Commissioner Scar answered the question that I was asked by one of our people. How is this different than what we've already set up as a finance position at several levels, including the treasurer and some people in that office, and perhaps in other departments, the people who handle the financial side of our larger departments? And I've heard the explanation now, and so I'll ask you, Jody, can you elaborate on anything that Commissioner Scar just said? In other words, my understanding is not only does this person process what I would consider receivables and payables and a lot of ordinary type financial transactions, but the medical industry, as most of us know, is an extremely complex and somewhat unique because of all the coding, and working with the insurance companies is a specialty in and of itself. So could you add a paragraph or two to my understanding of that?
Sure, I'm happy to. I always try to compare it to, like, if you go to the dentist or a medical provider, you have a copay, you have a fee agreement with that particular contract. It is paid up to that fee agreement, or how do you get reimbursed from some particular health billing cycle? It could be medical, dental billing, it could be mental health. How are those contracts administered? And it is those details. Did they pay their copay? Did they pay their responsibility? Where are the receivables in relation to collecting for those? All of those funds do go through our Treasury Department in the form of deposits and accounts payable. So if you have an invoice and you have to pay it, you follow the traditional county accounting principles. You have a budget that is set by the treasurer and those counting principles. So when we look at those, they're different in that manner. There is a whole large process in order for those to come through to get to our treasurer's department. When we're dealing with Epic and we're dealing with chart notes and we're dealing with pre-authorizations or referrals, there's a number of things, again, before it gets to the other parts of the county. And so that's why that work looks different.
Thank you. I know both our medical doctor and our dentist as well have people who do nothing but process all that, and are just very recently at our dentist's office, the individual who held that position was hired away by another firm, and I just in conversation, that position very hard to fill because it's in demand and it's a specialty in and of itself, as I understand it. They ended up contracting with a firm because they couldn't find any staff who was willing to work for whatever amount of money they were offering. So I would acknowledge this as a specialty, and so if we can keep this moving on this track and make it part of the larger long-term picture, good for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the discussion. I was reflecting on a meeting we had, I can't remember exactly when, but in the last year, talking about succession planning for the health department and the need to change the org structure because there was people where leadership were experiencing burnout or on the verge of burnout, and there was excessive amount of work and pressure at the top level. And I think anybody who knows Marlene would not be surprised to know that she's doing the work of at least 2 people. So we're talking about how that plays out in the future, and this is part of that problem solving. This is part of the solution. And so I'm fully supportive of it in that way. And when I talked to the treasurer about this yesterday, she said that she saw in the requisition that it was in range 14, but then the table we saw was range 15. So
That is an oversight. The pay table that should have been attached should have had that at range 14 and not 15. It was added to the agenda at range 14 and the classification stated 14, but when it was put on the pay plan, so we backed that out and corrected that to range 14. So thank you for noticing that.
Sure, you're welcome. Okay, I think we're ready.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time community health chief financial officer in the Health and Human Services Department, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Okay, now we have an unscheduled item that we just received this morning. So it is not written in the agenda yet, and that is for, why don't you tell us?
It is for a communications manager. You will see the requisition that was provided to the board. That requisition was a position that was developed back in 2022 prior to my arrival, and to my previous point of how long Marlene has been trying to, create some positions and some career paths to support HHS efforts. This one's been out there for some time. We do have a change in the market and the economy and available applicants. And so this requisition would be a request to fill that position that was developed all that time ago. I want to say it was April of 2022 that was originally developed, but we would like to run a recruitment and try to fill that position. It is at a range 10. And it is in alignment with the other managers in that division. But it will pick up some of the communications and internal communications, external communications for the HHS division, and look as a PIO to, again, try to help ease the burden of some other managers that are carrying that load, and eventually be able to replace the contract that the board reviewed last week for communication services for HHS.
Okay, thank you. We have in front of us the requisition from May of 2022, at which time it was a new position not budgeted for fiscal year 21-22. So my question is, did we budget for it?
It has not been budgeted, and it has not been placed on the pay plan, which is why I'm here today, is to ask for that to be budgeted and to be added to the pay plan.
Commissioner?
No, this is great. I think that communications in the health department, I look back to, what's happened over the pandemic and the amount that the requirements have grown for communication out of the health department, and that hasn't changed, right? There was so much that was learned during the pandemic about the need to reach out to our underserved communities and specifications of how and we need to do that. And so communications continues to be an absolutely crucial piece. I appreciate we've had a contract that has kept us rolling, and I do hope that we can put this into the pay plan and into the budget this year so that we can try to get an employee and move away from that contract.
Commissioner?
Thank you. So as I understand it, this would be exclusively to the health department. In other words, they fund it out of their own cash flow and has no impact on the general fund.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So then next, and this is a what if, and you don't even have to answer it if you don't want to, but the county has talked over some period of time about having a PIO, Public Information Officer, for the whole county. Right now, the various departments issue press releases and respond to inquiries and so on. And then a lot of, as this organization matures, and it's really pretty mature now, but as time goes on, sometimes there's something to be said for a centralized spokesperson for an organization. Would you think if the county ever did that, and that's an if, would this person be in addition to, or could that be folded back into a bigger picture, or that's a conversation for a later day maybe?
I think that's a good conversation to be had in the future. I recognize the many needs of a PIO countywide. We can talk about inclement weather, we can talk about hazards, we can talk about community events. I mean, any individual that is on the agenda today may have something that would be worthy of a countywide PEO to communicate either internally or externally. So the need for that, whether we run through a contract or another person or another employee would, I think, definitely be valued and helpful. This position, however, may be an extension to and not be pulled back in. I just know the many programs. If I were to put a sticky note on my wall for every individual program that this particular department runs, it is really difficult to keep up with the many different grants and communication pieces, whether it be for a client or a referral or for a community project or just clinic. I think they're going to be very busy with that. But I do think having, if there's ever a countywide PIO, some sort of cross-coordination to make sure everything we put out looks the same or has an intentional message. And I know Commissioner Bell did quite a bit of communications work in her prior career. What does that look and feel? Is there a county philosophy? Do we have a county font? I mean, simple things. But also just making sure that what's coming out of the county has a similar voice and it represents the board either to the employees or to the community.
Well, thank you. I recognize that'll be a conversation down the road at some point. I heard a number the other day, one last question, that the county has hired already this calendar year, not fiscal year, but somewhere around 50 employees. Could you just say, are we above average, or is that average now with turnover and all? Because that seemed like a pretty high number, and we're only half done with the year.
As of this July 16th with our onboarding, we'll be at 53 new hires. We hired 58 in the calendar year of 2023. Some of those would be our part-time parks hires, but not inclusively. That accounts for, Commissioner Bell may know this off the top of her head, about 10 of our part-time hires, but not inclusively. So we are tracking to more than likely double or be close to double of the amount of employees we hired. I think the story is that we're filling those vacancies that we've had through COVID. We had quite a few positions that we were unable to fill. We're finding a change in the recruiting numbers where we're seeing 10 and 15 applicants, sometimes even more for some positions. And so I think the tides of recruiting are changed and we're starting to be able to fill those vacancies.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it just seemed when you stop and think, we have somewhere just under 300 employees, but to have that's either significant turnover, maybe more than anyone would like, but you also offered a really good explanation. There were a lot of vacancies carried forward, and they're being filled. The flip side of that, of course, is there's money going out the door, which means it has a financial impact long-term as well.
Yeah, the last pay period, there was 305 active employees. 270 were full-time employees or an iteration of FTE. So maybe a 0.80 or a 0.75, but 270 of those were budgeted positions. The rest were part-time.
Do you think the market now has changed to where we could say this is unusually high turnover, or is this the normal ebb and flow?
I think our turnover numbers are still consistent with what we're seeing in the market today. I don't think we have excessive turnover. Part-time and seasonal work will turn over more frequently, obviously, because of the nature of the work. But between our FTE, our fully budgeted positions, we're not seeing an excessive change in turnover rate. It's pretty typical. Some positions do turn over more frequently than others. We've had some retirements. We've had some just changes in leadership over time as well.
Okay, thank you.
So part of that bump, as Jody suggested, was parks. Parks might account for 15 or so of those positions, and then some of them were people that we hired on as permanent full-time employees who had been temporary employees, but we actually need the jobs year-round. And some of them are temporary employees because HR took over the hiring of seasonal temps this year for the first time. So all of those were jobs that we were paying for, but we were paying for them through an agency. And so this is so that accounts for about 15 of those.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So Marlene, I have one question about this position, just because it isn't budgeted. I'm wondering if you're still available to answer this question. And because we approved the contract for the communications person, maybe just last week, I'm wondering if you're imagining this position to be in lieu of the contracted person or in addition to?
It's in addition to for a limited duration.
Okay.
So the plan was, while we were getting the job description finalized and working, we actually have 3 contractor people, but one that serves as kind of a coordinator or lead. So while that person was looking at our systems and we were reviewing the job description, she agreed to continue to work to bring a new person on board should we find one, and then to continue with a little bit of transition. We estimated 6 months. So that's what we expect the overlap duration might be, somewhere in that range, depending upon if we find someone to fill the vacancy.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we're ready.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time communications and well-being manager in the Health and Human Services Department, I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Marlene.
And Parker's not here today. I'm going to carry his,
Okay.
just FYI.
Okay, item 13, consideration of grant agreement number 2024-MHF-5 with Coastal Homes LLC for multifamily rental housing. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. So we saw all of these multifamily rental housing grant projects presented to us a few months ago, and Parker and Bill have been working through the contracts to get these all ready to rock and roll, and we have 2 of them on the agenda today. The first one is with Tyler Brogdon, and this is for Coastal Homes LLC, and this is a series of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, et cetera, in Bay City. So we have a contract in front of us for our Housing Commission Fund grant to Tyler Brogdon.
Okay, terrific. Commissioner?
Any questions?
Thank you. My only comment, I guess, is I'm glad to see this happening because very recently I've seen several other things come online, including some properties now in Garibaldi and I think down in the south end, and then here in Tillamook, seems to be a bit of an uptick, and so I'm encouraged that we'll have more housing stock here over the next 18 months. Good, positive, thank you.
Yeah, as am I. And we have heard about this project in the past. I've heard people in Bay City talk about it with excitement. So it's great. I'm glad it's moving forward.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of grant agreement number 2024-MHF-5 with Coastal Homes LLC for multifamily rental housing, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Okay, the next one, item 14, is consideration of grant agreement number 2024-MHF-8 with the Home First Development Partners for multifamily rental housing.
Perfect, and thank you. So this one is for the Manzanita Pines development, which is an affordable housing development. The one I spoke about before is actually workforce housing. This one is affordable housing. This is one that I think we've talked about a fair amount because Manzanita, it's come through the Manzanita Planning Commission and City Council. They received some federal funding, the city of Manzanita did, to help bring water and sewer to the site. This is just, it's a great community project. And we have a grant for them and $75,000 of sort of incentive funding to keep them moving forward. The other piece that this funding does is they are asking the state for LIFT funding and tax credits. And this is a piece that shows the local commitment to the project, which will gain them points in that state application. So another exciting project.
Terrific, thank you.
Well, thank you. Same comment is this adds to the housing stock, and it appears to be something that a good many people could afford as compared with some of the $1 million and up Ocean View homes. So good for everybody who's involved with that. So thank you.
Truly, thank you. There's talk in the community in North County about how extraordinary it is to have affordable housing available in Manzanita, largely for the workforce, which has been just, there's been a dire shortage, and some businesses have either closed or changed their model because they just couldn't get employees. And part of the reason is because employees have nowhere to live. So I think this is really encouraging.
Yeah, it is, and it's fabulous. There's a partner project to it called The Maker that is workforce housing, which is simply that next tier up. So folks who are above 60% of area median income would be able to live in the additional building next door. So there's a great hope that this will all come to fruition because there are also market rate homes that are being built out there by the developer. So it's just a really cool concept that will definitely become a model along the coast if we're able to pull it off. So we're excited to do our part. Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of grant agreement number 2024-MHF-8 with Home First Development Partners for multifamily rental housing, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 15 is consideration of an amendment to intergovernmental agreement number 14836A with the State of Oregon, Oregon Youth Authority, for the expunction of juvenile records. And with us, we have Matt Snell, Director of the Juvenile Department. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. What you've got in front of you is, this is an amendment, and I believe it's also a renewal of the expunction contract. What this is basically the state of Oregon reimbursing the counties for some of the work that is done on expunging juvenile records. In 2021 and 2023, there were two fairly significant changes made to the expunction laws, which expanded the type of cases that could qualify for early expunction, and it narrowed the time frame where someone would need to wait to have their juvenile record expunged. So that's why you see the fairly significant increase in the allowable dollar amount on the contract. And I believe this one is meant to go through the end of 2025. So this is this discussion was ongoing long before I became a juvenile director, and it finally came to fruition in 2021 session. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, thank you. No, it seems routine from what I understand it. I will ask a question about expunging of records. Does it happen as a matter of course, or does one have to initiate an action to go back in?
That was one of the changes in the law. The cases that are eligible to be expunged automatically it expanded. It used to be where an individual that had a juvenile record, they would have to initiate it on their end. They would have to fill out an expunction application and initiate the process themselves. That still applies to some cases. There's also some really, really serious offenses, mainly person-to-person offenses, that are not eligible to be expunged, even though you are a juvenile when they occur. So most of the expunction process is initiated automatically now.
Okay, well, then that's a change. Reason I ask that is I happen to have 3 children, so I have just a passing knowledge of how that works. Thank you, that's enough.
No, this is great. I think that, as juveniles, people make mistakes, and if there's this opportunity for expungement, that's important for them moving forward, so.
I agree. I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of amendment to intergovernmental agreement number 14836A with the State of Oregon, Oregon Youth Authority for the expunction of juvenile records, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we have an unscheduled item, which is consideration of a corrective plan of action for financial statement finding 2023-001. And with us, we have Sean Blanchard, Tillamook County Treasurer. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, so we received a letter from the Secretary of State Audits Division on June 28th regarding a finding we had in our audit. I reached out to our auditors, and they were under the impression that because we'd already corrected it, and that was all that finding was saying, was that we had found it and corrected a jail coding error, that the auditors thought that was it. Good. Evidently not. The state wants it on the letterhead signed by a commissioner. And so before you is that letter that I will send to the Secretary of State's Audits Division.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you. No, my only question, or I guess a comment, I've gone through the county's books over the years a lot, and the amount of entries that are made for $140 or $50 million and all the things we do and money that passes through our books, I'm surprised we don't have more errors. But this one was called out and very, very minor and simply what I would consider to be let's think of the right word.
Material?
Yeah, material. Good, thank you. That's a very good word. And so, yes, I support the change. And I guess what it says to the public is somebody else looks at our books as well, and that's not a bad thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree. It is, if you read the finding says this has been corrected, so it is odd that a letter is required to say this has been corrected since it was corrected immediately thereafter and policy and procedure updated. But appreciate everything that our Treasury Department does. There's a lot of transactions that pass through there. So to Doug's point, if we as human beings could all be perfect, that would be amazing. But the reality check is we are all human beings. So we've put in place an additional procedure that requires a second set of eyes on similar transactions, which is how we account for the fact that we're human beings. So appreciate the correction, and letter is a matter of course.
I'd like to add one more comment. I'll just add a quick story here that goes back a number of years and has nothing to do with Tillamook County, but it might give people watching some understanding of the complexity. Back when I was in college, I took a lot of finance stuff, and one of my professors was also an attorney and a CPA and a frequent expert witness at various trials. And he came to a class one day and said the day before he had testified on an embezzlement case, and it was the books were absolutely perfect, and everything was in balance and it looked good. And he said his testimony was that is so unusual for an enterprise of that size that he concluded with his expert testimony that the books had been remanufactured or redone because nobody goes over an entire a period of year without making a mistake. And some of it was done in ink, and you generally, this is pre-computers, mind you, it was not done, where you see some line outs and erasures and all that. So my whole point of that story is to have one minor mistake come forward out of what we do is really quite ordinary and to be expected and nothing to be concerned about at all. So it's just, people make mistakes, and if you have a perfect set of books, I'd be more concerned than if we made a mistake.
Thank you. Well, I agree with my colleagues. GL code entry error is the best kind of problem to have because it's so minor. So and I agree that it's good that we have oversight into what we're doing financially. So I think this is fine, and just, we're just checking the box now.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a corrective action plan for financial statement finding 2023-001, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, item 16 is consideration of a professional services agreement with McKinstry Ascension LLC for the Health Department HVAC replacement feasibility analysis. With us, we have Kevin Jolly, the supervisor of our facilities department. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, everyone. As you said, we have before you an agreement that with McKinstry in the county to perform an engineering survey on the existing inadequate but existing HVAC heat pumps situation at the health department. It's excuse me. It's been outdated and needing an upgrade for some years, and the whole system's aged and it's costing a lot to upkeep. And what this whole idea behind this is that we're going to bring in McKinstry Industries. They also did our facilities condition assessment that you may remember from some months ago. And this was one of the recommendations that they recommended to us for the health department. They went in and they did their survey and their analysis at the very beginning and recognized that the HVAC system has been pieced together over the years as the building has expanded from one purpose to another, and it's not really doing the job of what it's designed to do, which is heating and cooling the health department. So what this is they have an engineering department that we're hopefully planning to come down, and they're going to do several tests to to look at the structure of the buildings, the airflow, the office setup, and give us their recommendation on a correct and updated system. Where currently there's 5 heat pumps outside the building connected various different ways, kind of hodgepodge together. Perhaps after the end of this assessment, we may consolidate it down to one big unit, for example, that's more efficient, that can reach all parts of the buildings, et cetera. But they come in and do their assessment, and then after that's said and done, they do what is called a project development plan, where they give us their best recommendation on what would be replacement equipment for that, rather than just replacing the old equipment with new equipment, but it doesn't do anything to improve the serviceability of the system. A new, improved mechanical system that, like I said, may cut down the footprint of the 5 down to 2 or 3 or maybe even 1. They'll give us a recommendation on replacement.
Thank you.
And as Marlene might be able to attest, if she's still on and listening, this has been a problem that's been plaguing the health department for many, many years. And the P&L heating came out, and we had a conversation briefly that, that the existing system that they have out there is roughly servicing about half the building adequately. And the rest of the building is, you have cold spots, or not really cold spots, but no ventilation, that sort of thing. So hopefully at the end of days that this might be what we're looking forward to have, an adequate replacement to solve the problem once and for all.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. Questions?
No, definitely in support of this. This has been on Marlene and I's conversation list for quite some time. The Health Department main building is a building we lease from the Riggert Family Foundation. And the first conversation I think I heard about this was maybe as much as 2 years ago, as we were determining whether this was theirs to replace or ours to replace. And ultimately it was determined it is ours. We are responsible for interior of the building and services that provide for the interior of the building. So it has been a long-term conversation, and I'm pleased to see that we're moving it forward. There was a scare a few months ago at the health department where the HVAC system was smoking. And so this is, I think, kind of been bumped up to the top of the list based on that scare, that we really need to fix this, not only because it's at end of life, but because we are actually having work stoppages, interruptions based on the HVAC system. So it is time to do the analysis, get this figured out, and move forward. And there is funding in the health department budget to take care of these types of repairs.
Well, I think smoking is a good place to draw the line.
You know, yeah,
Right.
don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you have to, evacuate the clinic, that
Right.
to the point, the end of life that we tend to push things to before we are able to fix them. This is one of those sort of hazards of doing so. If
You get a phone call that says we smell smoke and it smells like rubber. That tends to get people moving really fast. So
Yes.
it's not the type of phone call you want to get.
No, I was on the phone with Marlene. She's like, I need to go. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner?
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, I think McKinstry is one of the gold standards for looking at these things. So I'll ask Rachel, was this, because it's a leased building, was this not part of our overall review of facilities?
The facilities condition assessment was a high-level review, and so this is in there. What's coming before you at a later date is a contract to do this similar work for all of those facilities. So we talked about this during budget. I think it was, it's a couple $100,000 proposal that we're gonna split across departments. The urgency with the health department, we've pulled that out, and they're moving forward on their own with it.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, in a perfect world, this conversation wouldn't happen because everything would be replaced on a schedule, but, you've managed by crisis, so to speak, is because that's how things work in most of the world. So yes, let's get this one done as well, and if you don't have a comfortable environment to work, then that's not productive either. So it's kind of a necessity, just as hot and cold running water is.
All right, thank you. I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a professional services agreement with McKinstry Ascension LLC for the Health Department HVAC replacement feasibility analysis, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, thank you, Kevin. Oh, you have the next one also. Consideration number 17 is consideration of change order number 2 to contract number 6489, prevailing wage rate contract for construction with Chown Hardware for the courthouse exterior door replacement project. Kevin?
Right, and what this is, like you said, is the extension of the completion date for the exterior door replacement project. And what this little last bit of work was to install the transom, I guess, windows above the both entrances. And actually, Chown was just here today and finished about an hour ago. So this is a completed project now, but ready for your signature, though.
Terrific. Well, the doors are working beautifully, so I think this is a successful project. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any questions about this?
Thank you. No, I'll just add to that. Over the years, I've worked with Chown on a number of things, locks mainly, both in my previous employment and in our business. I use them for a lot of things. They have been around, their family business been around for, I don't know how many, 100 years almost. And so the doors that I've used here in the courthouse are much better than what we had, and of strong commercial quality. And so, good. I'm glad that was a successful project. Thank you.
No questions. Happy that it's done.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of change order number 2 to contract number 6489, prevailing wage rate contract for construction with Chown Hardware for the courthouse exterior door replacements project, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion, excuse me, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, thank you.
Item 18 is consideration of a personal services agreement with Liftoff, Inc. for Microsoft 365 licensing. With us, we have Jeff Underwood, the Operations Manager for Information Services. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. The item before you this morning is for the renewal of our Office 365 licensing, which is our email services, our office productivity software, all of that good stuff that we can't live without. Prices have gone up significantly since our last, our 3-year rate lock has expired, and apparently they changed prices over that 3 years, and then, of course, they had a July increase for our licensing group as well. So the company that we're going through, because we budgeted in January, is giving us a discount to what we were quoted in January for this current year. And then, so next year it will be a little over $7,000 more on renewal. I have been doing some looking into it. There are cheaper licensing types available. What I'm looking at, this contract will be locked in for 1 year, which is the way Microsoft works. You purchase things for a year and then renewal. We get a rate lock for 3 years, but we're only, after a year, we'll be able to revisit other things. I need more time to really dig into some of them. The cheaper options give us less, we don't have direct access to Microsoft. We've got to go through them. If they can't fix it, it goes to a vendor, or the distributor. If they can't get it, then they go to Microsoft. So some things can take considerably longer. Liftoff is who Microsoft, when we first did this, we went to Microsoft and they specifically recommended Liftoff. They are solely government. That is the only thing they do. So they're very familiar with our specific needs. They provide some additional services that are fantastic. They've got additional webinars. Anytime we need some instructions or information on something, they are right there. I feel that it's definitely, considering the discount, it's worth the extra money for this year. I will do some research over the next year and see if maybe in a year, moving to something cheaper is the right move for us. There's also been some discussion about, is Microsoft Office the right package, or is the Google Suite? Are there other things? Which is a much bigger discussion, and we need significant research on that. But I think having a year to take a better look at our options is probably the right approach. Given that we have to make the change, it's time for renewal. I think we don't have enough time to really fully understand the other options at this point. But from everything I see, the AOSG, which is the government specific plan, that seems to be the best move for us at this time. And we'll come back in a year, and I'll have better information about some of the other options and whether, especially in light of budget futures, whether that's a change we need to make or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner?
Thank you. I was going to ask to have a little more explanation on Liftoff, but you did that. So my only comment on that is Microsoft and their products have at least a quasi-monopoly on this sort of thing. On the other hand, there are others out there, as you mentioned, the Google Suite and perhaps others. And so it doesn't hurt to look at that. But my view on a lot of this is it's a significant expense, but it's really rather nominal in the bigger picture of hundreds of millions of dollars, because I think it's important that the county be not so unique that we can't take advantage of cutting-edge technology and speak the same language as others. And I have never seen two software companies that spoke perfectly together. They just don't. They may be 80 or 90 or 97% communicating, but there's some glitch, and time is money. And so to do what we're doing, even though the price goes up, I think is probably the right business decision, at least for now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I know it's very frustrating. It feels like they have us held hostage because we are a Microsoft environment, and trying to change that, is difficult. So I think definitely looking at all options going forward, but to Doug's point, time is money, and transition can be exceptionally expensive. And I think of it like, the different satellite companies for your television. So you go to Dish because they've got a great deal, and then Direct pulls you away with a great deal, and you just spend this time ping-ponging, which at home at least is just learning a new remote. But here that would be a very, very expensive endeavor, because I somehow can't believe that Google wouldn't then have the same sort of an inflationary and increasing rate on us as well. But definitely worth looking at, but I think you're right. At this point, we need to renew and move forward.
I agree. Jeff and I had the chance to talk about this the other day, and cheaper isn't always better. And so, I appreciate that you're factoring in the dependability factor, which is tremendous. We need to be able to depend on our computer systems, and also the service factor and speed of service, and the time, to my colleagues' comments, the time that it takes to teach an entire staff a new system. So, and why is it cheaper? Sometimes there's a trick involved. Why it's cheaper right this minute, but it's not going to be next year. So, I appreciate being cautious and moving forward with the product that we know and trust. With that, I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a personal services agreement with Liftoff Inc. for Microsoft 365 licensing, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Item 19 is consideration of an order in the matter of the appointment and reappointment of members to the Pacific City Woods Parking Advisory Committee. And with us, we have Isabel Gilda, Executive Assistant. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning, Commissioners. So before you today is a board order appointing new members and reappointing current members to the Pacific City Woods Parking Management Committee. A little bit about this committee. 2016, the county adopted the Cape Kiwanda Master Plan, which was developed to improve, locate, and tourism-related facilities and infrastructure in the Cape Kiwanda area in Pacific City. Out of this master plan, it was determined that a parking management plan was the top priority. The county in 2019 developed and adopted the Pacific City Woods Parking Management Plan, also known as a PMP, much shorter. And the first step of this plan was the formation of this Parking Advisory Committee. And the purpose of this committee is to oversee and guide implementations of the Pacific City Woods Parking Management Plan. They make recommendations to the board, and they proactively address parking issues in the plan area. It's a 15-member committee with representations from major and minor businesses in the area, the transportation district, fire district, and there's a number of county staff that are appointed, and there's a couple of local community groups and the citizen at large. And today there's a number of, as I said, reappointments and appointments. We have 3 vacancies. Those are being filled with Brian Fatuli from the Transportation District, Jeff Kalivik, if I pronounce that, from the Chamber, and Dan Keys. These are the new appointments. Lisa Macy Baker is currently appointed to represent the community of Tierra del Mar because it's in the right edges of the plan area. She is now the chair of the Stucca Valley Community Alliance group, so she will be switching her representation on the committee, and that will leave the Tierra del Mar position open. So Lisa is switching her role on her first spot on the representation on the committee. And then the other reappointments are staff members and community members of small and major businesses. And I think that's it. So some of the appointments will be for 3 years and some will be for 4 years according to the original committee formation. And so before you today is for your consideration.
Thank you, Isabel. Well, I am grateful to all those folks for their willingness to serve and grateful to the new members who are stepping up. I'll ask my fellow commissioners if they have any comments or questions.
I don't, I agree. This has been, I think this committee has had a huge role in so much of the work that we've done in Pacific City, and appreciate the community representation that we see on this group and the conversations that occur in this group. So I'm also very thankful for those who are willing to serve.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I agree as well. That's been a very strong, workable group. I think you said it started in 2016, and I went to some of the meetings early on, and then there were some others that represented the chamber in South County, and it's been very influential in understanding there are no incorporated cities. So this was a good sounding board, and I think there was a good job done to bring all the various organizations and factions of the community in, and the leadership changed a bit, but I think Rachel's been there through thick and thin the whole time. And so it's, and it will continue on because there's a lot more to be done. So if you ever want to reach deep into the community and get a pretty good cross-section, this is it. It's a really good example of grassroots government, I think. So I fully support it. I know a number of those people on the committee, and they're clear thinkers, and they're going to do nothing but what they think is the best interest of the project.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Isabel. I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of Board Order 24-043 in the matter of the appointment and reappointment of members to the Pacific City Woods Parking Advisory Committee, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Isabel. You have the next item as well. Item 20, consideration of a Title III grant agreement with the Oregon Department of Forestry for the Tillamook County Yard Debris Program. Isabel.
Thank you. It's quite a mouthful. Thank you again. So for your consideration today is a new Title III grant agreement with the Oregon Department of Forestry for the Tillamook County Yard Debris Program. The Yard Debris Program provides an opportunity for property owners to remove and dispose of yard debris from their property in a manner other than burning during the fire season. Through this program, coupons are made available for homeowners to use at the county transfer stations, and that allows them to dispose of their yard debris at no cost. So essentially, it's an incentive program to reduce the risk of wildfires during the fire season. I think the program started in 2013. It's still going today. So as you know, the county had one round of Title III funding solicitations recently. We had $75,000 available, and we received during the solicitation process, we received 2 applications, one from the Oregon Department of Forestry and one from the Sheriff's Office. On April 24th, as part of the federal process, the Board of Commissioners read a motion into the record initiating these 2 projects as required by the Self-Determination Act. That opened the 45-day public comment period, and that public comment period closed on June 14th. Then the next was a public hearing to obligate these funds, was held last week on June 26th. The board read a motion into the record to formally obligate these Title III funds for the fiscal year 23-24 to the Oregon Department of Forestry for the Yard Debris Program in the amount of $75,000. So before you today is that grant agreement for those Title III funds in the amount of the $75,000.
Thank you, Isabel. Well, as you said, we discussed this last week and made the decision to commit all of the funds to the Department of Forestry for the Yard Debris Program. We know, because we hear from our constituents, how much they value that program, how much it's used. I'd also like to thank the sheriff who weighed in on the decision to appropriate all the funds to the Department of Forestry for this year, whereas in previous years we have split them between the Department of Forestry for the Firewise program and Search and Rescue, which we of course care about and fully support. However, the Department of Forestry told us last week, happily, that they have received a future grant for $180,000, which would fund the Firewise program for the next 3 years. So that's very exciting, which enabled us to devote the funds this year to Firewise and presumably next year to search and rescue. So I appreciate how that process played out, and I think it's going to work out beautifully for everyone. Commissioners?
Agreed. Thank you. I think we've talked about this a lot, and I think we're ready to move forward.
Thank you. I agree. We had the conversation a week ago, and it sounds like the next couple of years, if it all comes together, are funded, and we're good to go.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank Isabel for her work on this. She has jumped into leading the whole Title III process. I've just said, go look at the past files, use them as templates, and she's done a great job of leading this and diving in and taking this off my plate. So thank you, Isabel.
And
So you're
thank you-
welcome.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I second Rachel's thanks to you, Isabel, because this in particular is a very clunky process. It's really convoluted, and I'm grateful to you for taking it on and doing it so well. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of steps involved, so it was definitely a learning process, but I always had Rachel to help me along the way, so.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of a Title III grant agreement with the Oregon Department of Forestry for the Tillamook County Yard Debris Program, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Item 21, consideration of a professional services agreement with Northwest Code Professionals for building inspection and plan review services. Commissioner Scarp.
Yes, Sarah is away this week. So we have had this contract with Northwest Code Professionals for quite some time. They have been a great backup for us when we have been short-staffed. During the pandemic, they did a lot of plan review as well as inspections, and now we are down to just having inspections and very few inspections. In fact, we just hired, I believe it's a new electrical inspector that will be on staff with us immediately. And so we are really down to using them as a backup when needed. So it's been an important contract. They've been a great partner. We can't slow down our builders based on our, challenges in hiring. And so they have made sure that that has not happened. So just looking forward to renewing their contract so they can remain a partner as needed.
Thank you. Commissioner?
No comments. It sounds like business as usual, and I have heard of them that they know what they're doing, and we've got them under contract, so let's do it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we do need a backup, so it makes sense. So I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a professional services agreement with Northwest Code Professionals for building inspection and plan review services, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 22, consideration of a Nestucca Rural Fire Protection District request for permission to burn structures located at 6010 Pacific Avenue and 6030 Pacific Avenue in Pacific City in Tillamook County. I'll invite Chief Ader to come up, please, and invite Rachel to start the discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Isabel provided a lot of good background for the historic evolution of how we got to where we are with the Kiwanda Corridor project. It originated with the Cape Kiwanda Master Plan. So as part of the Kiwanda Corridor project, as you know, we acquired the 6-acre Jensen property to be used for open space, parking, as well as the realignment of Cape Kiwanda Drive, Pacific Avenue, and the intersection, and Sunset Avenue. So there are two buildings that are at the southeast corner of that property. They have been rented since we have acquired the property, but we have not relet the rentals as people have vacated, so we didn't have to ask anyone to leave when the time came to implement our goals with the project. So the properties are all vacated. We've completed the lead and asbestos abatement, and we are ready to proceed with demolition, which we will do later or after fire season is completed and Nestucca Fire is completed their training. So before you today is an authorization that allows Nestucca Fire to do trainings at the site, and it's ready for your consideration, and I'd let Chief Ader describe maybe what he plans to do there.
Thank you.
Good morning and thank you. We do have quite a bit planned and it'll be more than just for our agency. So this is gonna be quite beneficial for the whole county. We invite all the other agencies in. There's been some conversation with the sheriff's office, also with some of their team members about some of the stuff we did, the same kind of stuff out at the, State Parks property on Sand Lake Road where we had that house also for burning, and they got a lot of good training also, and we'll probably try to do coordinating. But, so once we get this signed, we will start, training in it. And then come the end of fire season is when we'll do 2 sessions of burns. The first one will be the Red House. That one, we still don't know how beneficial it's gonna be, but we will get some good training out of it. Because unfortunately, between asbestos and some damage that was created by vandals. But the fourplex will be a very good project for us to get a lot of good trainings. It's real solid, so it'll be a lot of good advantages for our people and everybody in the county.
Terrific, Chief. Thanks. Thank you for being here.
Mhm.
I was thinking about this project. I totally support this project and am glad for your crew and other crews countywide to have the opportunity to learn in a burning situation. And I was remembering about 20 years ago, I lived and worked in the valley and there was a school that was being burned, and I was working as a reporter and they invited me to be part of the Learn to Burn. So I got to gear up and be in the building with them in order to report on that process. And it was fascinating. It was, even to someone who is not a firefighter, it was clear to me how valuable that experience would be, like to see how fire spreads and to hear it and experience it. It was astonishing, actually. It was a really, really great experience, just even for an observer. So I can only imagine how valuable it will be to firefighters. So I think this is great.
And we will invite, soon as we have dates when the burns are gonna be, and any Monday evening, if one of you wanna come down, we'll get that scheduled for you also, working with our training officer to lay out what's gonna happen. I encourage you to come see what we're doing. So it does, and before I got over here, we have taken reporters in. There's some stuff we have to do. Even if any of you want to do it, we got to be able to get you into an air pack and stuff. But I'm more than happy to work with you if you want to see what that happens to. We have already started laying out a complete game plan on how we're going to handle traffic. We will not shut any of the roads down the way it is. We've laid out a good plan on how to make that accomplishment also. So we shouldn't, there will be some hesitation in traffic, but it won't be a shutdown, because that could be pretty bad for us moving forward on it.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, thank you. I was going to ask, he's just Jim to most of us, but we'll call him Chief Ader here today. But you mentioned the traffic. Just for the record, if you don't know this, Chief Ader now is the head of the Statewide Fire Chiefs Association. So he's worked his way up through a professional group and is now takes care of a lot of matters in Salem and statewide issues for all the volunteer fire departments in Oregon. There are lots of them.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
Chief.
Congratulations.
I did
Thank you.
read that recently. It's very impressive.
It will be a busy year this year.
Yes, it will.
With long session coming up.
Yeah, and that's planning, everybody's planning for that. I was going to ask about traffic, but it sounds like you've got it under control. And so I guess if somebody asked me, I would say the actual burn would be maybe after we've had a couple of rainstorms in October or August, late September, or?
Yes,
We don't know yet.
I know Rachel and I had, on the initial agreement, it was for September 30th. I asked that get pushed out till at least October 30th, and that's what's before you, because we don't know what the fire season is gonna do. If it's like we've seen over here before, we could be going long into September. So I just asked for that extension because of those reasons.
Makes sense.
Just one other thing about our fire department, I say our because I live down there, is for many years, it was really hurting for volunteers and staff, but I think now there's been two serial levies passed, one, and then it was just recently renewed here a year ago. And so they have, I think, 6 full-time people or 7, 6 or 7.
There's 9 that work the line, and then there is now 4 staff. So I have a full-time training officer, full-time maintenance, myself, and a deputy chief on the staff side. And we have we have 1 shift officer and 2 firefighters assigned that do opposite roles. They do EMS, they have to be fully EMS and firefighter qualified.
So my point being, the voters have supported now 2 times a levy, and the fire department is much better staffed than it's been over the last number of years and well-managed. And I think as a result, the ISO comes in and your insurance rating goes down, the insurance goes up and and your premium goes down a little bit, or at least stays static, because they can respond more quickly. They actually have people living in some of the fire stations, and so, you know, for a rural area, we've got a pretty good one here. We really do.
Thank you.
On the ISO piece, anything that is within 5 miles of any of our stations is now class 4, which is with ISO's classifications. 1's the best you can ever get. 10 is you can't provide anything. So when I first started, we were 6, 8B, and a 10. So throughout the support of the community and hard work for our people, we've brought that clear down to a 4 now.
That's great.
Yeah, nice job. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think this is great. I'm fully in support. I appreciate our rural firefighters very, very much, and I'm pleased to hear how many paid staff you have. I know that is a real challenge when it's all based on volunteers. Not that we don't have amazing community volunteers, but boy, that can be a tough go when, you know, my son is the assistant fire chief at Jefferson County. And, you know, he says, when you are waiting to see if volunteers show up so that you can just fire up a truck and go, that's extremely nerve wracking. So having paid staff that you have on each shift ready to get the truck warmed up and ready and head it out, and not just volunteers, that makes a huge difference.
All right, I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of an Nestucca Rural Fire Protection District request for permission to burn structures located at 6010 Pacific Avenue and 6030 Pacific Avenue, Pacific City, Tillamook County, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank
If
you
I
for
could
being
just
here, Chief.
add
Please.
one thing, as of just a few minutes when I stepped out for one of my phone calls, full burn ban will go into effect at midnight tonight. We have been talking about this for a day, started yesterday. With the weather we're getting, predictions, majority of all the chiefs agreed to that we needed to start it. So instead of ending the 15th or 16th as it was planned, we are just moving it up now.
Thank you. Thank you for that announcement. And just for folks watching, will you mention just a little bit about what that is? It's obviously burned piles. Is it also burned barrels? What all is it?
The only thing that it does not ban when it goes into effect will be a warming fire. And a warming fire needs to be in a approved fire pit or a ring that's 3-foot diameter, and people have to be by it. So you can't just go light a fire, walk away and not attend it. By the regulations and rules, it has to be attended. State parks is this kind of the same way. If you're on the beach, you have to be 50 yards, I believe it is, from any vegetation, and it has to be small, and then you put it out with water, not sand.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service to the community.
Thank you, Chief. Good to see you.
Okay. And thanks for your patience this morning through our long meeting.
Yes.
We picked the wrong one to put on the agenda.
This one's a whopper.
Okay, item 23, consideration of modification number 3 to personal services agreement number 5052 with Federal Engineering, Inc. for the voted simulcast for the Tillamook County Public Safety Communication System. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff.
Staff continues to move forward toward the November general obligation bond to ask the voters to help us upgrade the communication system that our first responders depend on. We have had a contract with Federal Engineering since 2019 when they were first hired to complete a system-wide assessment analysis and work with the user group to develop the preferred concept. And we have just kept them on board so we can continue using their services through engineering and construction oversight. So there's no change in cost here. We have, I think, $10,000 allocated. They've spent a little bit of it as we've been going through the campaign and updating numbers, et cetera. So before you today is just an extension in time, extending their work through June 30th, 2025. If the bond passes, we'll need to add costs and scope of work to their contract in December probably for the work that we'll be expediting. But right now, it's just an extension in time to keep the contract going.
Perfect, thank you.
And it's paid out of ARPA.
Okay, great. Questions?
No questions. This is great. I know we're moving forward and have my fingers crossed for November.
Same, I've no real questions, except you said if the bond, and the correct terminology
Thank you.
is when.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Yes, it's, I've read all their material several times, and they certainly know what they're doing, and they've been questioned on some of the things they've offered, and they've offered a complete explanation, and so I think everybody's on board with that.
I agree, and I am supportive also.
Madam Chair, in consideration of modification number 3 to personal services agreement number 5052 with Federal Engineering, Inc. for the voted simulcast of the Tillamook County Public Safety Communication System, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 24 is consideration of a personal services agreement with Global Grant Services for grant management. Rachel Haggerty.
We hired Global Grant Services last year as a trial to help county staff apply for grants, and it's been pretty successful. There's only so much that they can do if we're not providing them projects, and most of the projects have been coming from me for projects that I'm working on. There have been a few other departments who have used them as well. We have submitted a total of about $4.5 million in requests. We've received 1 award, 3 no's, and we have 3 pending, one of which is a large ask of almost $3.4 million for the radio project. So I think thus far it's been a successful use of ARPA dollars. That's what's been paying this first contract from last year, and that's what we'll be using for next year. And I think we just need to keep using them, and they've done a good job in what we've asked them to do. And as you know, with grants, some are awarded and some are not, and most of them are very competitive. So I've been pleased with their work so far, and it's certainly taken a large load off of my plate to have them do what they're doing. They're doing a really good job in writing and coming up with the justifications with very little information that I've been giving them. So that's great.
That is great.
So it is ready for consideration.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Thank you. No questions. It looks like a good way forward, and I'm not familiar with the firm, but I understand they're doing what they were hired to do, which is good.
I agree. I think this is great. For the first couple of, prior to becoming a commissioner, Commissioner Bartline and I had talked about a grant writer for the county and what that could look like and how it could be helpful. And so I think this as iteration of it where we found Global Grant Services is great, and I appreciate that hopefully it really is making Rachel's job a little bit more doable, because we know everything lands on her plate. So if they can help out, that sounds perfect.
I agree, and there is money on the table, and I want us to be positioned to be able to take advantage of as much of that as possible, and without having a dedicated grant writer, it simply isn't possible to go after everything. So I think this is a wise investment, and I'm ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a personal services agreement with Global Grant Services for grant management, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay. Item 25 is consideration of grant agreement number 2024-P1, transient lodging tax for destination management with the Tillamook County Pioneer Museum for the organizational capacity project. Rachel.
A few years ago, the board discussed allocating annually to certain entities in the county an annual allocation. And out of that discussion, they decided to allocate $250,000 annually to the Pioneer Museum, and that's largely based on the history of their requests that have come before the County Board of Commissioners during budget season, and this allows for them to plan into the future instead of relying on a year by year. We don't know what we're going to get to run our operations. So I think it's been very great for them. This goes through 2025, and the scope of work describes how they spend the funds on organizational expenses, including their forced staff, which is larger than I think it's been in recent time. Projects, their collections reconciliation project, improving exhibits, and they did a lot of upgrades to their infrastructure systems last year. So I think they're using their money wisely, and we have another annual agreement for your consideration.
Thank you. Commissioner Scar?
Thank you. So I do sit on the board of the Pioneer Museum, and I am excited with the progress that they've made. They do have an education coordinator now and have done a great amount of work with engaging with the schools, really getting our young people into the museum, which is exciting. Additionally, do have the collections manager. There's a ton of artifacts that have been donated to that museum over the years, and her project is to go through and catalog all of those, getting them into an electronic system, just, really taking the museum up a level in terms of its organization and its professionalism. So it's an exciting time to be a part with that museum. They also have been changing their collection, which is fun to go in and see. So if people haven't been stopping into the museum, you should do it regularly. Things do change, and it's a lot of fun to see what's happening. I think the other piece that's always important to remember as well when we talk about funding for the Pioneer Museum, because we went through a window of time where the county was not regularly funding the museum, is to remember that prior to Measure 5 and Measure 50, prior to all of this tax stuff getting rolled together, there was a levy that was specific to the museum that had been passed by the voters of Tillamook County to ensure that that museum had ongoing funding. And so I think our ability with the transient lodging tax to step in and to meet that, I'm going to say mandate of the voters, is really important. And I try to get that on the record every chance I get, because I have 4 more years, but after me, I don't want that to be lost. I want us always to remember that the people of Tillamook County asked for this museum in perpetuity, and it's important for us to meet that mandate of the people.
I agree. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I agree with Commissioner Scar. I remember during the budget hearing at one point where rather than go through each and every allocation, there were several that just got a standing approval that would become part of the process going forward from the TLT money, and the museum was one, and there were several others. So yes, that's a wonderful organization. Keep it going, and this makes sense to me. So yes.
Terrific. I'm also a yes, so I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of grant agreement number 2024-P1, transient lodging tax, TLT, for destination management with the Tillamook County Pioneer Museum for the organizational capacity project, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, item 26 is consideration of a purchase and sale agreement with the Neil K. Sandy and Phyllis M. Sandy, trustees of the Neil K. Sandy Revocable Trust, for property located at 4610 3rd Street, map and tax lots, Township 1 South, Range 09 West, Section 29, tax lots 00202 and 00203 in Tillamook County, Oregon. Rachel Haggerty, and we also have Michael Cattell joining us. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Rachel, do you want to launch us?
Yeah, I'm going to provide a little bit of background as I've done before when we've talked about this project, but it's a little shorter. ORS 1.185 states that the county in which a circuit court is located or holds court shall provide suitable and sufficient courtrooms, offices, and jury rooms for the court, the judges, other officers, and employees of the court and juries in attendance upon the court, and provide maintenance and utilities for those courtrooms, offices, and jury rooms. Tillamook County Courthouse was built in 1932 and is ranked fourth worst in the state according to the 2008 Oregon Court Facilities Assessment commissioned by the state's Interim Committee on Court Facilities. It's the 45th worst courthouse out of 48. For decades, Tillamook County has attempted to solve courthouse security, space, ADA, and seismic issues. I've spent a considerable amount of time and been involved in numerous attempts, all which have resulted in only minor remodeling to mitigate an urgent need or dead ends due to budget or political reasons. After lengthy board deliberations in 2021, the board affirmed that it wanted to invest in the courthouse. It was not cost-effective to abandon the courthouse and start new here or elsewhere. More space was needed, and the courthouse should provide safe, efficient, and pleasant spaces for employees to work and visitors to visit. Deliberations resulted in the board's decision to proceed with a three-phased project that involved courthouse remodeling in phase 1. That included remodeling the board's current meeting room on the top floor at the time to relocate courtroom 108 operations from this room to that larger space. Remodeling this courtroom, this former courtroom, for the board's new meeting room, which we're sitting in today. And also remodeling the Nestucca meeting room downstairs to support circuit court jury assembly. And then lastly, completing a seismic assessment. So all of that has been completed. Phase 2 was the construction of a new county administration annex on the south courthouse lawn or adjacent to the museum. And phase 3 would be further out, would be subsequent remodeling once administration was moved to that new annex. Following the completion of the phase 1 remodeling in 2022, the subsequent phases went dormant, as has occurred many times before due to budget and political reasons. Then in late 2023, a few things happened. The county was made aware that circuit court space needs were continuing to grow, in part due to the establishment of new specialty courts. The county was contacted by Mr. Neil Sand regarding an opportunity to purchase his property where the BLM office resides. BLM has since vacated. Their lease ended June 30, which is why Mr. Sand was contacting us at the end of last year, as well as others. Preliminary analysis determined that the building may be able to support all of circuit court and all of district attorney operations. The property is 3 acres and has a 13,000 square foot building located on it. And the AOC, the Association of Oregon Counties, Oregon Judicial Department Court Facilities Task Force, at this time had released its deadline to submit project funding requests to the legislature for the 25-27 biennium. In January of 24, the board approved a proposal with a new approach submitted to the task force. The 2021 approach that contemplated a county administration annex was revised to an off-site county annex that would support circuit court and district attorney operations. Pursuing this approach required purchasing Mr. Sand's property and implementing an extensive building remodel to relocate those offices to the remodeled building. In March of 24, the task force deliberated and recommended our project to be included in the state budget for 25-27 biennium, and it will be considered by the legislature during the long session in early 25. Over the last 6 months, County Staff and Council have been negotiating a purchase and sale agreement for the acquisition of Mr. Sand's property. The negotiated purchase price set forth in the agreement before you today is $3 million to be financed with county funds sourced from ARPA and a bank loan. We are confident we can secure state cost share funding for the engineering and remodel to fully implement the project and relocate those departments. County and circuit court staff have been collaborating on this approach, and circuit court staff are very supportive of the approach. This is a long-term project with funding needs spread out over at least 6 to 7 years. This solution to relocate circuit court and the district attorney's office out of the courthouse to a newly remodeled building is currently deemed to provide the best long-term, cost-effective, and feasible solution to resolve the major structural and life safety deficiencies in the courthouse and be an investment for the future. This morning, Mr. Cattell and I present the agreement to you for consideration, and at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cattell to review the provisions in the proposed agreement.
Thank you, Rachel.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning,
Good
Michael.
morning.
So the document before you refers to the property that Ms. Haggerty was discussing, the 3 acres with various improvements. It does require $100,000 earnest money that's paid within 7 business days. Out of that, $10,000 is immediately released and turned over to the seller, Mr. Sand, and that is non-refundable except in the event of a default by the seller. The remaining is refundable in certain situations, including termination of the transaction due to failure of due diligence or title review or the seller's default. The $3 million is exclusive of closing costs. So at Mr. Sand's requirement, all of the closing costs, including escrow costs and title insurance premium costs, are borne by the county. The due diligence period is 75 days from the date of signing, and with a 15-day extension for an additional release of $15,000 earnest money. Closing would occur within 15 days after the end of the due diligence period. Ms. Haggerty and I have a aggressive plan for due diligence. We've already been in contact with many of the consultants we would likely use during the due diligence and have them lined up to make sure that we can complete the due diligence within that 75 days. And we're ready to go as soon as we go pending on this. Does the commissioners have any questions that they would like to discuss?
Commissioners?
Well, I think everything we've talked about in this has essentially been an executive session, correct? So for this, if for anyone watching or listening, this is probably a new conversation. So I think we want to be thoughtful about that as we talk about this with the public. And I think Rachel did a great job of laying out the need for this, that we have a requirement, mandated requirement to provide adequate court space, and that we are not. So this is something that we must move forward with. I think we have, as Rachel also laid out, looked at many options in the past. One of the numbers that struck me this year that really helped make the decision as to whether this was a good option going forward or not was the cost of construction of a courthouse for court facilities specifically. And the construction cost of a new courthouse is estimated to be $1,000 per square foot if you go with a new building. If you have an existing building, that number drops, I believe it's to $700 per square foot. So when we were looking at this option in front of us and saying, is this, the best way forward? Part of the answer was just in the fact that this would probably be the most affordable answer we will find going forward. The opportunities for large building space in Tillamook County are very, very limited. So having this come on the market when it did at the size that it is really makes an awful lot of sense financially. The other conversation we had at length was, why has this project failed to move forward in the past? And what are the chances that that would be a repeat problem and or get worse in the future? And in the past, it's failed to move forward because of funding. At one point, there was an option that was simply $1 million short. Now, simply $1 million is, it's a huge dollar amount. But as we've moved forward, every other option we've had has been many, many millions of dollars short. So it's time to solve this problem. This is probably the most cost-effective way we will find moving forward to solve this problem. And with the state's split on the building, by moving it out of the courthouse and actually choosing a new location, we actually get more state money than if we tried to keep the courts here and remodel it. So there's some really key pieces to this that struck me as to why this is the right time, why this is the right solution, and I think we need to move forward and solve the problem. I appreciate that there is due diligence in the contract. We can take a look at this, and if we discover there are material defects in the building that make it just not the right building for us, we will be able to end the transaction If the appraisal comes back and it's significantly out of alignment, we have the opportunity to end the transaction. So there are a number of pieces here that protect the county in this due diligence period as we move forward. So I'm comfortable with the agreement, I'm comfortable with the due diligence, and I think we need to move forward.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with what Commissioner Scar said. We've followed this along, and if I go back to my time on the Budget Committee, even before I sat in this chair, we did look at some property out by the jail some years ago and came up a little bit short. At the time, it made sense, and I remember being somewhat disappointed and even annoyed that we couldn't scratch up a relatively small amount of money, which was $1 million or more, but, you know, which sounds like it is a lot, but in the big scheme of things, not so much. And then the other option here on the property right here in Tillamook. So when this came along, it seemed to me to be a very obvious choice that given the location, the size of the building, the parking, the access from north, south, and around, and I think even bus service for jurors and others, it really was ideal, and it just kind of came out of nowhere, and an option like that I don't think would present itself very often. So for going forward and what we've gone through, to me, makes a great deal of sense, and I hope we get it done. There are, as pointed out, some contingencies, as would be standard in any real estate transaction, especially one of this size and significance. But I think if those are satisfied, and we do have good consultants that will look at it, including mechanical, structural engineers, I think there's a traffic analysis planned and some other things. And so if those come back positive, then I think it's we go forward. Now, that's the acquisition of the building. The bigger issue will be building it out and putting in the proper security procedures and all of those things, which will cost a fair amount of money. But I think I know the state will be a partner in that, and perhaps there's a way to get more money from the state, but even not. This is something that's required by the state of Oregon. And the way the courts work, for those who might be watching, is the courts pay their own way. They pay for their own personnel and a variety of other costs, but they don't pay, excuse me, they don't pay for the facilities. Counties, excuse me, in the state of Oregon are required to provide the space. And that is the reason this has become such an issue over the last number of years. So I think we're in a good place. I think the things are coming together. It was a bit of a struggle, but sometimes real estate matters are. So I'm in full support of going forward and hoping that the findings of the due diligence come out in the county's favor, and we can solve what has been really a long-standing problem, and maybe we can move from number 44 out of 48 to number 5 or 10 or something in the top 10. So let's keep going. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank Rachel for all your work on this to date. I think we're at an exciting place. As my fellow commissioners have said, this is a problem that's ours to solve. And of course, you know, the financial implications are daunting, but as Commissioner Scar stated, there are distinct advantages to A, using an existing building, and B, creating an entirely new court facility opens us up for a greater level of funding from the state. So it on paper, it looks like we should be able to do it. It'll take a long time, but there are plenty of protections built in with the due diligence process to see, in addition to all the things that have already been said, to see whether or not this facility will actually work. Can we design it to be what the Tillamook County Circuit Court needs it to be, and will the traffic pattern work, and will the parking work, et cetera. So we'll find out whether or not it'll work. We'll find out how it appraises, and you know, move forward accordingly. But it's encouraging. You know, I think everybody probably has financial trepidation about, oh, this is a big commitment. But on the other hand, it's a problem that we need to solve, and it's ours to solve, and it's been put off for 15 years, easily, maybe 20, by, you know, board after board after board because of all those problems. And every time it's put off, it gets that much more expensive. So I'm glad we're pursuing this possibility. I appreciate Rachel's work and Michael's. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we're ready for motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a purchase and sale agreement with Neil K. Sandy and Phyllis M. Sandy, trustees of the Neil K. Sandy Revocable Trust for property located at 4610 3rd Street, map and tax lots, Township 1S, Range 09W, Section 29, tax lots 00202 and 00203, Tillamook County, Oregon. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you all. Okay, well, we have an executive session, and will you give us the?
I sure will, 194 192666028.
Thank you. I do not believe that we will be making any decisions coming out of that, so I'll read our meetings and announcements now. The commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024 at 2 p.m. to discuss weekly commissioner updates. The meeting will be held in the Commissioners' Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue in Tillamook. Teleconference number is 971-254-3149. Conference ID 866-914-607#. Independence Day is an observed holiday for the county and the Oregon State Circuit Court. All county offices in the Tillamook County Courthouse and the Tillamook County Library, administrative offices in the Jail and Justice Facility, Public Works Department, Department of Community Development, Surveyor's Office, and Health and Human Services Department and clinics, and the State Circuit Court will be closed on Thursday, July 4th, 2024. There's no board briefing scheduled for Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. Instead, the commissioners will attend a Budget Committee Roundtable meeting on July 10th, 2024 at 1 p.m. to discuss upcoming budget planning. The meeting will be held in the Commissioners' Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue in Tillamook. Teleconference number 971-254-3149. Conference ID 866-914-607#. And we would like to wish everyone a very happy, safe 4th of July. And with that, we will recess for executive session at 11:34 a.m. Thank you for your patience, Sharon.
It was a marathon. Okay, I'm gonna step
Do you wanna
upstairs
move
real
up?
quick and I'll be back.
Do you want to come up?
We're gonna take 5 here,
Sure.
aren't we?
Okay. I don't expect this executive session to be very long. You know, if you take like to have lunch, done within a half an hour, but
Mm.